And so we had stability.
Yes.
Yeah. Then what you can do then, from my point of view, is you can go and you can offer other people a future in agriculture. I'm not getting any younger. I don't know any people who are. So you can offer people a future. Then you say, oh, if you want to learn how to be a farmer now, and you want to have a future in agriculture, well, now we have a land base.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm at the tip of the Olympic Peninsula in the shadow of great mountains with the Puget Sound on the north side in a town called Sequim, actually a rural area. My guest is Nash Huber, who is the owner of Nash's Organic Produce, which is quite an interesting enterprise. Thank you for joining us in this beautiful, beautiful sunny day in fall.
We got a good one, didn't we?
Well, I wanted to ask you, how did you get started here? I mean, now you've got, what, 400 acres you manage, but tell us how you got to there.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of a Midwestern refugee. Raised on a farm in Illinois in the Midwest, and things started changing in a big way back there in the 50s and 60s. And I graduated from college in the 60s, and it just didn't look like there was any room there for somebody to make a go of it farming. Dad was still a young man, and he couldn't make a go. He went to work for Caterpillar Tractor Company in order to raise his family. And I got out of school and went to work for a stately manufacturing company, helping refine corn and soybeans into oil and food products, and kind of saw that side of food processing and how they were making industrial food at that point. Didn't like what I saw there. I wasn't comfortable with the way farming was going down. It was changing from fairly diversified, family-oriented, small acreages, pretty people-intensive, It was obvious that period of time, as I look back on it now, it was over with. We were going through huge transitions. People were being moved off the land in one form or another. And farms were going from 80 to 160 acres, family, small operations, a lot of human input, a lot of people input, small machines to very large machines, and just basically cash grain, corn, soybeans, that sort of thing. So I just kind of didn't feel real comfortable in that environment and was looking for opportunity. I got as far away from there as I could.
This is the other end.
This is the other end, right. I got as far away from there as I could and ended up here. I mean, if I would have gone any further, I would have gotten out of the country or gotten wet, one of the two, But, I came across the rise coming into Sequim there one August afternoon and saw this place, and it was just freaking gorgeous. It was just as pretty a place as you can get. And it was still an agricultural community then.
When was this? What were you talking about?
Mid-60s,
okay.
late 60s,
all right.
Okay.
Big valley. I mean, this
Big
area
valley.
is quite flat.
It was all agricultural. There's something like at that time there was 35,000 acres under irrigation. Mountain water.
Wow.
Small farms, family farms. Yeah, a real special area. It was coming had been under a lot of stress, this area, and you could see it happening. I was a little bit young to understand what was going on there. I had some of the same things happening here that was happening in the Midwest. They weren't big enough to raise a lot of commodities, although they were raising some commodity. They were raising some wheat here, and we've got a big grain elevator. We had one anyway. Now it's a Mexican restaurant. And
Interesting.
yeah, it is.
So they were feeling the same pressures from
Of
industrial
course.
agriculture.
Of course.
Here.
Yeah, you couldn't get big enough because the area's not big enough. All the farms had a relationship to dairying at one level or another, where they were small dairy, and regulations was changing a lot in the 60s on dairying. There was not enough room here to get big enough. The local cooperatives, the dairy cooperatives that had existed, the local dairies, processing centers, were being bought up and pushed out of business. So dairying was consolidating, and we went from several hundred dairies to now we have 2, both family operations, one small and the other one's medium sized. And those, you know, one of them has gone to direct marketing, raw milk, and I think there's a future for them. The other is still selling commodity milk, and they can't get big enough because of the land available to them. So their future is, you know, I'm very much, I think that they're thinking about it a lot themselves.
So tell me about what you found. I mean, it sounds like your heart said, here's where to be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for several years I kind of struggled with that decision, trying to figure out a way to make a living and to farm. I think farming was you know, it was obviously raised in it, and I think genetically, you know, as I look back, my dad's family's still farming in Germany. They've been farming there for several hundred years, so I think I'm enough of a plant breeder and seed person now after these years. I understand that that was probably in my genetic makeup as much as the cultural makeup, you know. So,
okay.
Yeah.
You were born to be a farmer.
We're destined to be a farmer, I think. Yeah.
So how'd you start? Here.
Yeah, I had $20. I was well financed.
Boy.
I think if I'd had a lot of money, I would have really gotten in trouble. You know, I mean, a lot of people did in agriculture back then. You know, money was cheap and easy, and the ones that did, most of them, when hard times came, they
went down.
Got washed out. So we had to put it together piece by piece, and it took us a long time to do it. But in the process, we learned, you know, how to do it, and struggled with all those issues that agriculture have, you know. Just not only knowledge and finance, but people, you know, and land access, and access to land, access to water, and how do you get proper financing, just all those issues that are so important. You know, what kind of agriculture? You know, I was trained as an organic chemist. Well, you know, when I first heard the name organic agriculture, I've listened to that in the terms of being an organic chemist. I said, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You know, what's that mean? You know, when I first heard that term in the early 70s. So it took me a while just to be able to hear what they were saying.
And now it's in your name.
Yeah, it is.
You're bringing organic in.
Yeah, right. And that wasn't me that did that. It was part of my crew that I worked with that did that. They're the ones that could see it. I couldn't see it.
You were just doing what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So so with your $20,
yeah.
what'd you start with? I mean, you had to get some land somehow to start farming.
Yeah, I mean, just using 8 vacant lots in the town of Dungeness, you know.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you know,
wow.
Big gardens, basically, because they didn't have any tractors, didn't have any equipment, had an old beat-up van. So we just I was keeping bees. My grandfather was a beekeeper, and so I was doing that, and that was, you know, and I love doing that, keeping bees. So I was keeping a lot of hives, and moving them around in different places, following the nectar flows, and so kind of got tied into the agriculture community, and just started raising it, and realized taking honey to the farmers markets, well, you know, that's great, but you can't support yourself that way, at least the size I was. And this is not a great beekeeping area, it's a marginal area. So just started raising a little bit of produce, you know, and taking that to the farmers market. Farmers markets were what supported us.
Really?
They're the secret. They're the secret to small-scale agriculture. Not only from that perspective, but also from I think from the consumer's point of view too.
Well, it's fresh, and we get to meet who our farmers are, and it's nearby.
Right on.
And
right on.
you kind of get to build a relationship there, and you know who's going to have your best carrots or cilantro
Right.
or whatever it is.
Right, you do, and so it's all about relationships. I mean, not only the marketplace, but actually in the production, it's all about relationships.
What do you mean?
Well, this is a people business. I mean, access to land. A lot of young people come out and they want to be farmers, like I was, and I had a little bit of knowledge because I was raised in a farming community. I didn't know that I had that knowledge, but I did. And they don't have the knowledge. It's real because we've destroyed that whole system in the last 40 years. That no longer exists. There are very few people who are raising farms anymore. So the young folks who want to get a farm don't have the agricultural knowledge. They don't have, they don't have access to finances, which is good because then they get in a whole lot of trouble, lose a whole bunch of money in a hurry. I mean, skilled people can lose a whole lot of money in this business in a hurry. So it has to be relationships. It has to be relationships that allow people to get into agriculture, allow them to begin to access the knowledge and access the land. And so you have to build that somehow.
I understand that the amount of land that you own, right now you're managing, what, 400 acres, something like that?
Yeah.
And you don't own all that land.
We own about 5% of that.
That's, I mean, so you're doing something smart about being able to use that land. How did that come about?
Out of necessity.
Okay.
Out of necessity. I mean, yeah, you have to do. You got to solve problems somehow, and you come up against problems, and you figure out, well, how am I going to get access to land? So, like I said, we started out in garden spaces, vacant garden plots that weren't being used, and actually they were, so. And then as we got better at doing what we're doing, or we began to acquire a couple of running tractors, little 20, 30 horsepower tractors, and begin to drag old farm equipment out of the fence rows that had been abandoned and utilizing that, and begin to develop markets.
Beyond the farmer's market?
Yes, that happened fairly soon. We began to develop markets outside the farmer's market pretty soon. I mean, because the organic thing was starting to happen then, and so wholesale looked good to us. We were not very smart, and so we suffered through that with a lot of beginning farmers, beginning the organic wholesale business, watching that start up and flop and start up and flop, and begin to learn the wholesale business the hard way. It's the only way to learn it, really. And then begin to develop and build up some infrastructure, and this area, the delta, we're farming in Dungeness River Delta, best soil on the planet, really. Most farms started off in most agriculture areas. That's where people started farming. Sure. That's where the soil's the best.
Deltas.
The deltas. Of course, that's where all the cities are too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, once we used up all the vacant lots and had those covered in produce, we started looking, well, let's see, there's a 5-acre field over there, there's a 10-acre field over there. It's not being used, they're just running cows on it, or it's not even being used at all. Found out who the owner was and went and talked with him. Can we rent this? So a lot of the first few years, we were farming organic, they renting year to year, which is impossible.
Wow, because you've got to be building your soil.
That's right.
And not,
That's right.
Wow.
So we were lucky because, because agriculture had come under this stress in this area, it was no longer, conventional agriculture was no longer viable. And, the area was looking to develop and sell off the land as development lots. So the land was just sitting there waiting for the next real estate agent to come along and make a good price on it. And so, yeah, okay, you can have it this year. It was good soil. It hadn't been being used for a while. It was in grass and sod, heavy sod, best stuff going, Nobody did anything with it, so it was easy to certify it right off the get-go.
Wow.
And it was really good dirt. So we were lucky in having those resources available to us.
And it just kept growing. It just get more part.
Yeah, you're successful in this 5-acre parcel, and then you go to, there's a 10-acre parcel or the 40-acre parcel or whatever. Once we got, the skill level up enough, and we got a couple extra pieces of equipment, and other people came to join us, would come and work for a year or two, and yeah, so just build it.
I understand that you got some help from folks to preserve this land for farm use. Is that? Can you tell us about that?
Well, if you've got a farming area, my people have been farming for several hundred years, whether in Germany or in this country, on both sides of the family. So it's pretty deeply ingrained in me that you got to have access to land, and not only access, but you got to have stability.
You got to know it's going to be there.
You got to know it's going to be there.
Yeah.
And you can't train the next generation. You cannot offer stability to people for agriculture unless you've got a land. Water would be another good one. The water system here is pretty good. They've maintained this irrigation system that they put in over 100 years ago. It's still in good working order. They maintain it. The community's done a good job there. They haven't maintained their land base, basically because of the economy of this country. So, that's the issue. How do you maintain access to agricultural land? Well, we struggled for a while, 5 acres here, 10 acres there. I think maybe 15 years ago I was farming 50 acres, something like that, 40 acres, and doing a pretty good job of it, I think, but none of it was solid. It was all until the next developer came along and offered the owner, so we were just interim tenant. We didn't own anything. And then this farm right here, the farm we call the Delta Farm, was a 100-acre parcel. It had already been short platted into 5-acre parcels on paper. Nothing on the ground yet. Still the infrastructure was here. Great land, irrigation water flowing through it, on an irrigation canal. And so I heard that it was going to go on the market. The owner had passed away a few years previous. It had been being rented to another local farmer. He'd been here for 10 or 15 years, running cattle on it, beef operation. Beef operations tend to be in-term relationship operations. They tend to indicate that land's in transition, at least in an area like this. If you see cow-calf operation, it probably means that it's not a stable. It's not a stable, really. Not stable.
Like a farming operation would be. I
right.
see. Okay.
Tend to be. It's just an observation I've made here. It may not be. Anyway, so we had built up a little bit of relationship with a chain of small cooperative retail stores in the Seattle area, Puget Sound area, called PCC, Puget Sound, PCC, Puget Consumers Co-op. And they were, a group of right-minded food purveyors. They had half a dozen stores in the Seattle area, and we were selling them produce, shipping it in there. It's a 2-hour run, 50 miles, 55 miles. So we were, and so I'd gotten to know the people there, and and they were a co-op, so they understood what was going on here from the cooperative point of view, and they understood their food system a little bit. They'd been struggling with it, and so I went to them and told them about this farm that that had gone on the market and was going to, and so I understood that if this farm sold and that the Delta was gone, because it sits right in the middle. It was a key location. And we'd already lost quite a few of the pieces in the Delta, but nothing as major as this, and that that I knew that the pieces surrounding it that I was farming on would go. And so I just went to him. I said, I asked, and Joe Hardiman there, who was the buyer, our buyer there, and the other two people, the CFO and the CEO of the company, and then a woman, Jody Leeson, who took over the fundraising. They all went to the bank and borrowed a little over $500,000 and bought the farm, just like that, you know, decision making.
On their credit, they bought this land.
On the co-op's credit.
Wow.
And then they formed this foundation fund, 501c3. Jody went to work and raised the blasted money and paid off the mortgage, and hell, we burned the mortgage here 6 years ago or something like that. It's been, it's free and clear.
So what is that organization?
It's PCC Farmland Trust is the name of it, and has the same name as the PCC cooperative stores, but they are two different operations.
What, the mission to do more like this, saving more farmland?
And they have done that.
Hi, Pooch.
They have done that. How you doing there? Choco. Yeah. They have done that. Actually, our farm was the first farm, and they took that idea that essentially Joe and I came up with, and then he went back there to the offices and sold several other people on it, and they bought the farm, and it turned around and leased it to us for 30 years.
You know, what's interesting, I'm just going to stop and say, that's really visionary.
No, it's just it's necessity.
Well,
it's
I understand that.
Mother's necessity of invention, I guess, you know.
But that your first thought about getting land that you have stability is to raise the next generation.
Well, it's in my blood, operation. I think it goes back to being a farmer. I think my people have always done that.
So here you are starting to raise the next generation, or you've been doing that.
Yep.
Tell me about that part.
You know, it just happened that, again, out of necessity, because you can't, you know, along with that, I made the decision here about 20 years ago, I either got to get a lot smaller or a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Because I was getting older.
Yeah. And
so I just can't do the work myself anymore.
Okay.
And so I just being a maniac, kind of, I enjoy doing what I do. I could see there was a future here. I could see the land opportunity. I knew that this boom real estate business was going to fall flat in its face at some point. It was going to happen sooner or later. And so I knew that, and I also knew we were going to, people like to eat. They need to have fairly consistent, stable supplies of food. And one of the other things that's pretty important, I think, is that it's got to be clean food. Coming from a chemist, background and training, and having been a chemist, and still am really down deep, you can't eat that stuff out there. You go in a grocery store, most of what's there is either dead or deadly. You got to be really careful about what you eat, and you got to read the labels, because it's really important. It's really important. It's probably the most important thing you do, is what you eat. And that's the only way we're going to deal with health in this country, is we're going to deal with, and that's the other part of my vision, is that you have to pay attention to what people are eating. And it's everybody's responsibility to do that. You can't do it for somebody else. They have to do it for themselves. But they got to be smart enough and caring enough, and they have to have the, help in one form or another to do it. So you have to offer people the ability to eat good, clean food.
Which is counter to what most of America is getting in their markets.
Yep. How'd we get in this mess, huh?
So you're not surprised at all by the healthcare epidemics and the lack of wellness?
No, it's been obvious for a long time where we were headed.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the old saying, it's got to get a lot worse before it gets better. It's probably where we're headed.
So you're on to giving us clean food.
Yep. And for myself, for the people I love, for my community, yeah. I mean, it's occurred to me many times in my life that food's important. Food's important to me. I mean, I can peaches every year. I make pickles. I do that stuff just from our own use, because I like to have the access to good, clean food. And so you know, it's part of my genetics, I guess. I don't know. It's what I like doing.
And so that love and that genetics, and now you've got stable land, and you've got, tell me about that next generation, because you're not getting any younger.
No.
But you got wisdom to share. You got lots of experience that you want to hand off so that they can make clean foods when you aren't.
Yeah. I think it's important that you set that next generation up so that they can do that. They have the option to do that. And so you offer that, you know, you make that available within your community somehow or other. And people come along and they tie into it. You know, they relate to it in some fashion. And you begin to work them into the process in the way that they seem to be best adapted. You know, basically you're letting people do what they really enjoy doing with a little bit of help.
Wow, that's
You know?
that's pretty enlightened.
Well, I don't know if it is or not. It's just, you know, it's just, you know, if people don't enjoy what they're doing, they ain't gonna do a good job.
That's right.
And so they have to enjoy what they're doing. There's kind of one of my main principles.
So how many, you know, the young people that you're bringing up to be that next generation of farmers, about how many of the folks in your enterprise, I don't even know how many people you got working with you, but how many of those folks do you have that you've been bringing along?
Well, we probably got at least a half a dozen people who are starting to pay attention, you know, at least, you know, that, I mean, Scott, who's the manager for the vegetable, he's 34, 35, he's been with me 12 years now. He essentially runs the vegetable production, you know, it's over 100 acres of our operation. He essentially runs that, manages it, you know, selects a seed, plants a seed, you know, oversees the cultivation and growing and irrigation and the harvest. And then Sam McCulloch, who runs all the big machinery, manages the shop, handles, you know, he prepares the soil, he tills the soil. He and Scott are in close consultation. Sam's been with me 7 or 8 years now.
He does your composting?
He's running the composting out there. Well, there's another young man that's actually running that Sam's training.
Okay.
He's kind of, you know, Sam's been with me about 7 or 8 years. He came to me right out of high school. Colton is out there running the machine right now. He's got good potential. He's smart, bright, you know. You know, he's still pretty young. He's trying to figure out what he wants to be. But he seems to enjoy this work. Then there's Kia, and she's it's kind of funny how people come here. I mean, sometimes they just walk on, you know, like a stage. You know, one spring morning we were out there in the orchard, and I saw this gal walk through in coveralls, and Scott was out there pruning with the crew, and I said, "Who's that?" I hadn't seen her around before, and he said, "Oh, she just from Maine. She came and she's looking for a job." It's probably about 10 years ago. She's sales manager, you know, runs the office down at the packing shed, manages the packing shed, you know, got fire in the belly, you know, just takes the world by a bit in the teeth and just, you know, leaves tracks down your back if you get in the way, you know. And, you know, there's quite a few folks like that.